Somebody has told you about the bread. Ball up a piece of white bread, push it into a line you have to cut, and it holds the fluid back long enough to do the work. No draining, no bucket, no lost afternoon. That is a real trick. It is not a joke. Plumbers still do it today, and men in service bays did it for decades, and the man who told you about it is not a fool. Here is why it works. Soft white bread compresses into a dense plug that grips a pipe wall, and it will hold back a low-gravity head for the minutes you need to make a joint. Then the system runs, the plug turns back into crumbs and slurry, and it passes. But that was a coolant line, or a heater hose, or a water pipe. Water dissolves bread. That is the whole mechanism. Fuel does not. Gasoline and diesel will not break that plug down, so it does not dissolve and pass. It travels. It ends up wadded against the fuel filter, or wound into the pump strainer in the tank, or sitting in an injector that costs more than the repair you were doing. And on any car built since the middle 1980s, that line is not sitting under gravity. It is under 40 to 60 pounds of pressure, so the bread does not hold anything at all. It just goes. I spent 30 years as a fleet mechanic, keeping trucks running on a yard where nobody had time for a tow. By the end of this, you will know where bread genuinely belongs, the 3 tools that do the fuel line job properly for under $40, and how to open a fuel system without putting yourself in a hospital. Number 17 is the free step almost everybody skips, and skipping it is why men end up with gasoline in their eyes. Number 11 is a $12 tool that turns a full tank drop into a 20-minute job. And number 1 costs nothing, and it is the reason a fleet man opened 100 fuel systems and never once had a fire. These 25 tricks were never about a slice of bread. They were about men who knew exactly which fluid they were standing in front of, because everything you are allowed to do next depends on that one answer. Let us count down the 25 things they knew about opening a line. Number 25. Where bread actually belongs. A heater hose, a coolant line, a water pipe you are cutting with the system drained to below the joint. You ball up soft white bread with no crust, push it in with a finger or a dowel, and it holds the seep while you work. Then it dissolves and passes. A fleet man in 1964 used it on heater cores all winter. It was never a plug for pressure, it was a plug for a trickle. Number 24. Knowing the fluid before you know the fix. Every rule about opening a line changes with what is inside it. Coolant is hot and under pressure, but water-based. Fuel is flammable and often pressurized. Brake fluid strips paint and cannot tolerate air. Refrigerant is under high pressure, and it is illegal to vent. A shopman in 1964 named the fluid out loud first. The line looks the same. Nothing else about it is. Number 23. Pinching a hose properly instead of plugging it. A hose pinch pliers is a locking tool with wide flat jaws that squeeze a rubber line closed without cutting it, and it costs about $12. It works on coolant, heater, and low-pressure lines, and it holds them shut for as long as you need. A garage man in 1964 kept 2 on the bench. You do not have to fill a hose to stop it, you only have to close it. Number 22. Never pinching a hard line or a nylon one. The pliers belong on flexible rubber. Clamp a steel line, an aluminum line, or the nylon fuel line that runs the length of most modern cars, and you crease it permanently, which restricts flow forever or splits later at speed. A mechanic in 1964 checked the material with his fingers first. The tool did not fail. It got used on something it was never made for. Number 21. Working the coolant system low. The simplest way to open a coolant line without a mess is not a plug at all. You drain to just below the joint, and gravity does the rest. 10 minutes with a drain plug and a jug beats any trick. A shopman in 1964 drained first and cursed less. The bread was for the man who could not get low enough. It was never the first choice. Number 20. Cutting rubber lines cleanly. A knife or a hacksaw leaves a ragged end that never seals under a clamp, and worse, it can shed rubber crumbs down the line. A hose cutter or a sharp blade rolled around the circumference in one pass gives you a square end that seats full. A fleet man in 1964 cut every hose square. The clamp does not make the seal. A flat, full end does. Number 19. Catching what comes out. Before you open anything, a drain pan under the joint and a rag wrapped around the fitting. That rag catches the spurt that always comes, and the pan catches the rest. Coolant is sweet, and it poisons dogs and cats, so it never goes on the driveway. A garage man in 1964 put the pan down before he picked up the wrench. The mess is not the problem, it is what the mess lands on. Number 18. Getting a stuck hose off without cutting the neck. Men grip and twist and tear the plastic radiator neck, which turns a $6 hose into a $500 radiator. You slide a small pick between the hose and the fitting and break the bond all the way around, then twist gently and it walks off. A shopman in 1964 freed hoses with a pick and patience. It was not the hose that was stuck. It was rubber bonded to metal over 10 years. Here's something nobody is counting. The men who came up opening lines by hand, who could name a fluid by smell and knew which ones would hurt them, are nearly all gone. The youngest are past 80. They did not keep this in a manual. They kept it in their hands, over 30 years of standing in a pit with a pan and a rag. When they go, the pinch pliers stay on the shelf at the parts store, $12, exactly where they always were, and the knowing goes into the ground. That chain ran bench to apprentice for 50 years, and then the fuel system got sealed behind a relay nobody was told how to pull. If this is worth something to you, take 1 second right now and hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell. That is the only reason a video like this ever reaches the next man who needs it. Number 17. Relieving fuel pressure before you touch anything. This is the step men skip. A modern fuel rail holds pressure for days after the engine is off, so cracking a line without relieving it sprays atomized gasoline at your face and across a hot manifold. You pull the fuel pump fuse or relay, start the engine, and let it run until it stalls. Then crank it 3 more seconds. That is free, it takes 2 minutes, and it is the whole difference. Number 16. Doing fuel work cold and outdoors. Gasoline vapor is heavier than air and it pools, and a hot exhaust manifold is well above its ignition point. You let the engine sit until it is cold to the hand, you work outside or with the door open, and there is nothing burning, sparking, or charging anywhere near you. A fleet man in 1964 would not open a fuel line in a closed bay. The fuel is not the danger. The vapor and the ignition source are. Number 15. Keeping the fire extinguisher within reach. Not in the house, not across the shop. A dry chemical extinguisher rated for flammable liquids on the ground beside your knee before the first fitting comes loose. A shopman in 1964 set it down as part of the setup. If you ever need it, you will need it in under 4 seconds. Anything you have to walk to is a decoration. Number 14. Never a shop vacuum near gasoline. Men reach for one to clean up spilled fuel, and a standard shop vacuum has a brushed motor that sparks, drawing fuel vapor directly across it. That is how garages burn down. You soak spills with absorbent or cat litter and sweep it up. A garage man in 1964 kept a bag of it by the door. The vacuum was not the wrong idea. It was the wrong machine. Number 13. Using the right fuel line clamp. There is a proper tool for holding a fuel hose closed, and it is not the coolant pliers and never a locking wrench. It is a purpose-made fuel line clamp with a controlled gap, around 15, and it belongs on rubber sections only. On a nylon or steel line, you cap or plug the fitting instead. A fleet man in 1964 used a dedicated tool, right material, every time. Number 12. Plugging a line properly with a cap or a bolt. When you have a hose open and want it sealed, you do not stuff anything into it. You put a golf tee, a proper vinyl cap, or a clean bolt of the right diameter in the end and clamp it. Nothing goes down the line. Nothing has to dissolve later. A shopman in 1964 Kept a coffee can of caps on the bench. A plug in the end is a plug. A plug in the middle is debris. Number 11. The quick disconnect tool. Most fuel lines on modern cars end in a plastic quick connect, and men break them trying to pry them apart, which means dropping the tank to replace a whole line. A set of disconnect tools is about $12 and releases the clip in seconds. A mechanic in 1964 had the equivalent for his era. That fitting is not stubborn. It has a catch, and there is a tool shaped for it. There is a reason nobody tells you which $40 of tools does this. Count the money. A fuel line replaced at a shop runs $250 to $600, and if the line is inside the tank area, dropping the tank is $400 to $800 in labor alone. A fuel pump assembly on a common truck is $600 to $1,200. And a filter or an injector fouled by debris somebody pushed down a line is a diagnosis nobody bills as an accident. Now price the other side. Hose pinch pliers, $12. A fuel line clamp, $15. A disconnect tool set, $12. A pan and a bag of absorbent, $10. Under $50 of tools that never wear out against a bill that starts at $250 and climbs. The craft was not lost. It was made unprofitable, and then it was allowed to die. Do me one favor before we get to the top 9. Hit like, subscribe, and turn that bell on so the next one finds you. That is the entire price of this. Number 10. Reading a fuel line before you touch it. Look at what you have. Braided rubber hose with clamps is old style and low pressure, common on carbureted cars and short connector sections. Smooth nylon tubing with plastic couplers is a modern high-pressure line. Steel hardline runs the length of the car. Each one gets a different tool and a different approach. A shopman in 1964 read the plumbing first. What it is made of decides everything you do next. Number 9. Using real fuel injection hose and nothing else. Standard rubber fuel hose is rated for a few pounds and will swell, soften, and burst on an injected car running 50 pounds. It has to say fuel injection on the wall, and it goes on with proper fuel injection clamps, not worm gear clamps that cut into it. A fleetman in 1964 matched the hose to the system. Hose is not hose. The number printed on it is the whole spec. Number 8. Understanding what your fuel filter actually catches. Rust from an old steel tank, sediment, and whatever anybody has ever pushed down a line. A filter that is plugging repeatedly is not a bad filter. It is telling you the tank is rusting or something is loose in there. A garage man in 1964 cut a filter open to see what he was fighting. The filter is not just a part, it is a record of what your tank is shedding. Number 7. Never siphoning fuel by mouth. Men still do it. Swallowed gasoline, or gasoline aspirated into the lungs, causes chemical pneumonia, and it puts people in hospitals every year. A hand pump siphon is 15, and most cars built since the 1990s have an anti-siphon screen in the filler neck anyway, so the hose will not go down. A shopman in 1964 used a pump. The fuel is not just flammable, it is poison. Number 6. Draining a tank the right way when you must. Sometimes there is no trick, and the tank has to come down or come empty. You do it with a hand pump through the sender opening or the filler into approved metal or red plastic fuel cans outdoors with the battery disconnected, never into an open bucket. A fleetman in 1964 filled proper cans and capped them. It is not the draining that hurts anybody. It is what it gets stored in. Number 5. Knowing when the line is not the problem. A car that stalls under load or loses power going up a grade is often not a leaking line, but a clogged filter, a weak pump, or a plugged tank vent. Opening a fuel system to fix a symptom you have not diagnosed is risk for nothing. A shopman in 1964 tested pressure before he cut anything. The line is what you can see. It is rarely what is wrong. Number 4. Checking for leaks after before you drive. With the line back together, you turn the key to on without starting, which runs the pump and pressurizes the rail, and you look and smell at every fitting. then again with the engine running. A garage man in 1964 checked twice before he handed keys over. A joint that seeps in a driveway becomes a fire on a manifold at highway temperature. Number 3, knowing which lines an owner should never open. Brake lines, because air in the system means no pedal and it takes a proper bleed. Air conditioning lines, because venting refrigerant is illegal and it can freeze your hands. And high-pressure diesel injection lines, which run thousands of pounds and can inject fuel through skin. A fleet man in 1964 knew the line and did not feel bad about it. Knowing when to stop is part of the trade. Number 2, the setup before the wrench. Every time in the same order. Pan down, rag ready, extinguisher at your knee, battery negative off, fuel pressure relieved, car cold, area ventilated, right tool in hand. 6 minutes. It is not the repair. It is the standing appointment you keep with yourself before you open anything that can burn. Number 1, naming the fluid and the pressure out loud before you cut. That is all. 2 seconds. What is in this line? And is it under pressure? Because every mistake in this video comes from a man who reached for the trick before he answered those 2 questions. And the bread is only wrong because nobody stopped to ask which system it was invented for. Your grandfather did this without calling it anything. He called it knowing what you are into. Number 1 is not a trick. It is the question that makes the other 24 safe. If this was worth your time, hit like, subscribe, and turn on that bell right now. It cost you nothing, and it is the whole reason I get to keep making these. None of this needed a certification, a scan tool, or a subscription to anything. It needed a pan, a rag, $50 of tools that outlast you, and a man who answered 2 questions before he opened a line. That was the default setting in every bay in America. Not confidence handed down from a classroom, confidence built from having opened enough systems to respect the difference between the ones that spill and the ones that burn. We did not lose the knowledge. The pliers are on the shelf at the parts store, $12, right where they always were. We lost the hands that reached for the right one, and the old man who put a pan under a car, set an extinguisher by your knee, and said, "Now tell me what is in that line before you touch it." So tell me down in the comments what you are driving, and go look at the fuel line running along the frame. Braided rubber with clamps, or smooth nylon with plastic couplers. That one answer decides everything in this video, and it takes 30 seconds to find out. He is gone now, and most of what he knew went with him. But not all of it, because some of it is in this video written down at last. So keep the bread for a heater hose where it belongs and where it works. And for anything that burns, spend the $50 once and do it properly. Next time I will show you how those same men found a fuel delivery problem with a $30 pressure gauge in 10 minutes on a car 3 shops had already guessed at. The craft is not dead. It is $50 and a willing hand away.